So last week, Maitreya Bandhu launched this boat by talking about what he regards as the first meditation essential at the moment, which is consciousness. Yeah, he kind of put it in the big perspective, imagining a new consciousness. Yeah, he was talking about it's well and good. The motivation with which we sit down to meditate. It's well and good, even if that's a fairly mundane motivation, calm, health, clarity. That's all well and good, but it's not enough to steer the course. It's not enough to take you further. So what he was emphasizing was the fact that we need a bigger perspective when we sit down to meditation. Of course, meditation includes calm, it includes clarity, it includes well-being. That's all included, but it goes a lot further. And the way he beautifully illustrated this by using the example of his niece, interacting with his niece. You remember he was talking about this story about his niece sort of grabbing, misperceiving the trousers of a grown-up, and him telling the story to the niece, and him seeing it poignant, her finding it silly. And he was emphasizing the fact that it's hard to know a consciousness beyond our own. It's hard to communicate what a consciousness beyond our own is like. And the fact that most of us are the issue, a useful metaphor for the spiritual life is simply one of growing up. He said beautifully that most of us, in a way, are still sort of children. He said we're sort of 8-year-olds stacked high with sophistication. I like that bit. In a way, the issue for us is to really grow up. And he contrasted the consciousness of the child to the adult as a sort of analogy for the consciousness of us, of you and me, to that of the Buddha. The Buddha's consciousness, which is almost unimaginable, is almost so beyond us that it's hard to sort of imagine what that could be like. Yet, in a funny way, at the same time, we can get an inkling. We do get flashes of inkling of what that might be like to have a consciousness that goes beyond our ordinary, everyday way of being and way of seeing. And that this big figure here in the shrine room around which we sit sort of is there to remind us of that beyond, that bigger consciousness that we, in a sense, are trying to grow up and into. Yeah. So, of course, what leads on from this is the effort needed to bring that consciousness about. Yeah, how does that kind of consciousness come about? What do we do? Yeah, how can we? What do we have to do in order to let that happen? So this is what we'll be looking at tonight: the effort needed to bring about a new way of being, a new type of consciousness, and specifically how we're doing this in meditation. So, I think the first thing to say is the effort. The main effort from a meditative perspective is concerned with clearing away, if you like, the things which block us or inhibit us or keep us bound, keep us tied to the same old tired habitual patterns of seeing and behaving that we're generally they're fine, but after a couple of decades they get tiresome, and they even get frustrating as our sense of something more to life grows. So in Buddhism, we call the Buddha called this, and he spends a lot of time talking about this, is what they're called kleshas, yeah. So I'll try and not. I have a predilection for Buddhist words, but that's the only one I'll use tonight. I promise. So this word kleshas, yeah, it means something like afflictions, yeah, or incorporated it includes a whole bundle of negative emotions. But I like the word afflictions because it brings out the fundamental pain, actually, of what is involved with having this kind of mind that is encumbered by kleshas, yeah. And the Buddha talked about it as a veil of kleshas, yeah, the klesha varana. He's talking about it as a veil of passions, that stops us, yeah, that stops us seeing clearly, that stops us being more. A deep veil that we live in, our mind lives in, almost like a cataract through which we perceive, and the way we perceive affecting the way we behave. Yeah. So the effort that we're using in meditation, particularly, is focused on working with this veil. Yeah, working with this veil of negative emotions, working with this veil of afflictions, the kleshas, and working out what, first of all, seeing it, yeah, recognizing it, and then finding creative ways to be rid of it, yeah, to move beyond it. And when we can clear the veil, when we can clear these negative afflictions which limit us, then something more does emerge, something more does come through, and you will all have had experiences of this to some extent or another. So I just want to also place this in its context of broader practice, because although this is a meditation course, is it a course? Yeah, it is. And then, so we're focusing on meditation, yeah. Traditionally in Buddhism, you'd think about the path as a threefold way, yeah. It's traditionally known as the threefold way, three big aspects of life which we consciously work on, yeah. So it's known as ethics, meditation, and wisdom, yeah. So all the while, so for example, myself, my task, it seems, in life as a Buddhist is to work on ethics and meditation and wisdom, yeah. So that's the sort of the broad path that the Buddha taught, yeah, which we're following here at the London Buddha Center. Ethics, meditation, and wisdom, and they come. I mean, a lot of places you wouldn't even start meditating until you'd sort of start on the first one. Yeah, you wouldn't start meditating until you'd, well, at least to a large extent, sorted out your ethics. Yeah, really looked at your behaviour. Yeah, in some parts of the world, you wouldn't get to the mat until you'd, until you'd really examined and looked at your behaviour, until you'd done a lot of things before you could sit down to meditate. Likewise, in other parts of the Buddhist world, you wouldn't get to meditation until you'd studied hard. Yeah, you'd really have to study hard the philosophy of Buddhism, the psychology of Buddhism, the myths of Buddhism. You'd have to study all this hard before you were sort of brought on to meditate. So, but we're looking at meditation, so we'll focus on that tonight. But I just wanted to emphasize that it sits in this broader framework, yeah, and that the three are, of course, interdependent. Yeah, they depend on each other. The other reason why I wanted to mention this threefold framework is because it impinges on our understanding of what's going on with these negative afflictions that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So although we'll be concentrating on the afflictions themselves, the understanding is that these afflictions arise from a fundamental delusion that we all have. Yeah, they arise from a fundamental delusion. The part of Buddhism that's concerned with wisdom is concerned with looking at the fundamental delusion we have about the way things are. One way you can talk about this is by talking about our sense of a me in here and a you out there, a me that is fixed and separate from other things. a belief in a fixed and separate self, which leads to, well, deep egotism at the base of our base of our being. Even our being is a product of this deep-rooted egotism. And that fundamental delusion, which Buddhism says is not the way things are, it's a delusion, gives rise to this veil of kleshas, all these negative emotions, which are particularly the ones that afflict us. Yeah, so it's out of that deep delusion that the negative emotions arise. Those negative emotions then express themselves in sloppy behaviour, right? Yeah, the realm of ethics, yeah, our behaviour. So it's out of the negative afflictions that we do things that are, sloppy, do things that are stupid, do things that are inconsiderate, do things that are cruel and harmful, yeah? And the whole thing spins on itself until we get into a pickle. So the idea is that from the fundamental root delusion, unskillful states of mind arise, which we act out in our lives. Yeah. So what we're looking at is what we're working with largely in meditation. At least what we're going to be looking at tonight is this middle part. Yeah, the negative emotions themselves, recognizing them and getting some purchase on how we can work with them. Yeah, what we can do, the effort needed to clear them out of the way, so that something more skillful, something more something something more like this can start to emerge. Yeah. Yeah. So let's look at what kleshas are like. Yeah. So there's all sorts of lists in Buddhism. Yeah, there's all sorts of lists of negative emotions or afflictions of the mind. But I'm not going to do any lists because of various reasons. And I'm just going to give some examples of the main kleshas that most of us are probably dealing with. So classically, core klesha is a sort of restless hankering, yeah? Restless hankering for something, yeah? A craving for anything, a craving for something. This is probably one of the big three. And so I was thinking about what I want to do is just give you a taste of what I mean by this klesha and how it feels, and then we can look at what you actually do in meditation and how that can help with it. So, for instance, this klesha, this hankering, I've been thinking about it the last couple of days, knowing I had to talk about it, and so I was thinking about how do I experience this craving klesha. And of course, there's all the sort of large, flagrant examples of craving, which you can pretty much work out for yourself. So I won't really look at them. But I was interested. A few nights ago, I was in a pub. Yeah, I was in a pub with a friend from school. Really good to see him. Yeah, really old friend. Hadn't seen him in a long time, and I'm really enjoying our encounter. At one moment, he pops off to the loo, and I'm left on my own. And of course, what do? I sort of just bring out my phone. Yeah, bring out my phone. And before I know it, I'm sort of, I'm almost the little Twitter bird is just about to pounce into my vision, and I just caught myself and was like, Singhamanas, what are you doing? And what's the point in this? What's the point in this? It was particularly stark because the pub had very nice lighting. Yeah, I'm very into nice lighting, so I like Buddhist centres. And it had very soft, warm lighting, and the light from my phone was stark and harsh, and it really sort of made me sort of flinch. And then I just thought, when you catch yourself, and you go, what do you want here? What are you looking for? And of course, I could use my reason to say that there wasn't really anything I was looking for. It was pretty specious stuff I would find. I knew that, and also I knew that my friend would come back, and I've sort of gone off. I've got this precious opportunity to be with someone, which is what I really value. Those are some of the things I really like in life. Those encounters especially when you haven't seen someone for a few years. It's like, so what happened next? And then here I am, sort of slightly sullying the experience by filling my mind with potentially stuff which is going to take me away and distract me. The reason why I did it, of course, is because basically I was sort of uncomfortable. I was uncomfortable being on my own, waiting. Yeah, I know. I was uncomfortable being on my own, waiting. So I just put the phone down and went, oh yeah, I'm just feeling a bit uncomfortable actually. I'm Buddhist in a pub and just not sure how I feel about that right now. Anyway, of course, noticing the discomfort, noticing that in that instance was enough to bring in some humour. So I found myself funny, not in a in the right way, and then I was able to relax, and then I was able to enjoy the light again, and then of course my friend came back, and I had become conscious of the scenario, and then we carried on having a very good time together. Yeah, so very, very common though, right? Very, very common. I keep having to remember to do this one. It's really like, the old, any opportunity, hankering. And it's a really good time to check. I mean, of course, I'm into phones as much as, the next Buddhist, but it's important to check that you're not just doing it, or if you are, just check if you're doing it from a sense of lack. Yeah, if you're doing it from a sense of empty hankering, because if you are, you won't sate that. You won't sate that with that thing. Yeah, and just check that. It's almost like a mindfulness bell for me at the moment. It's like, whoa. Are you okay? Are you? I sort of kind of check in, and am I all right? Am I okay? Woo. And that's one way to get in touch with this klesha that is really persistent. Yeah. So another big one is broadly termed ill will. This is another classic affliction that we have to deal with in meditation and in life, of course. Ill will has all sort of species of manifestation, yeah? The one that seems to be afflicting me most at the moment is a subtle or not so subtle sort of road rage. I have noticed that since moving to London I've become a rather aggressive cyclist. I've become a very fast cyclist, but I've got increasingly aggressive. And like, for instance, this week on the bike, got into this tussle with this car. I mean, they were out of order, but nevertheless, I have to take responsibility for my own mental states. I really got into, basically I got really pumped up, yeah? Arms pumped up, adrenaline. And I got into this tussle, and I was prepared to kick. I had to confess this to some of my friends recently, but I was almost prepared to kick the car in aggression and cycle off. Yeah. And then I caught myself like, Singhamanas, hold on a minute. Is that what you want to do? Is that really what you want to do? And of course, no, that's not what I want to do. yeah, of course I don't want to do that. I don't want to be like that, you know. I don't want to live in a world like that, yeah? And again, in that instance, well, again, what happened was noticing my body, my arms were like pumped ready for a fight, and adrenaline right up here, you know, the adrenaline comes right up to the head, and the scenarios start spinning, working out what you're going to do. That's aggression. It's ill will. It's the thin end of a wedge wanting to destroy something which is not suiting me, is challenging me, is threatening me. And again, this one I didn't. I just felt stupid, frankly. But meditating on it, because it's quite serious. Actually, I find that quite serious. I really don't want to be like that. It took me a while to again, in meditation, I could feel the affliction. I could think back into the memory what was happening. Yeah, so I could recall it in meditation in a much more much more spacious, much more slow scenario where I could look at it more closely. What was that about? And that gave me the chance to. Well, when I remembered it, of course, the adrenaline came back. Whoa, I'm back in the scenario, almost back into what I was going to do. But then they allow that to settle a little bit. And of course, I could see that in this instance, again, it was about underneath these emotions, there's normally further emotions. In this case, there's basically fear. Yeah, there's basically fear and threat. Underneath most negative emotion involving ill will or aggression, there's threat, of course. It's fairly obvious when you think about it. In the moment, you can't feel it. In the moment, you're too pumped up to be in touch with the fear, be in touch with being scared, yeah? But basically on the bike, of course, I'm feeling vulnerable, so the way my body responds is to I'm feeling threatened, yeah? Often underneath our ill will, there's hurt or threat, yeah? Something's being threatened. That's hard to get in touch with, that's hard to really notice. And that's one of the things that meditation, if you can quell the ill will, if you can quell the aggression, sometimes you get a glimpse at that which is underneath it. That it's often fear, something's being threatened, maybe a value is being crossed, or just something your life force has been in this case put in danger. Yeah, so. In a way, these are two of the big ones that certainly I am dealing with in meditation, looking at more clearly. So this is an example about these are examples of kleshas, yeah, afflictions. Those states themselves are painful, yeah. They're painful in and of themselves. Like feeling aggression is very, very painful. Now, I just want to finish by talking about what happens when you can move through this, yeah? So, in meditation, especially, what we're sort of doing is, or we wait, don't we? We settle into the body, we see how we are, we see what's on our mind, and often the clue to what's on our mind is what's we're feeling in the body. That's why we spend so much time looking at the body. And then in a sense, these kleshas, these veils that stop us seeing more clearly, stop something more wonderful emerging, something coming through, as it were. Well, first of all, we need to notice what's there, yeah? We notice the weather, we notice the kleshas, we notice what's on our mind. And then when you can clear the kleshas, your mind enters into a different way of being, yeah? When you're free of the kleshas, when you're free of things like this restless hankering, this scared aversion or frustration or irritation, even when you're free of confusion or vagueness or wondering, or sort of restless, frustrated. What am I doing again? What am I doing here? What's what? When you can clear this away, your mind enters a different way of being. Yeah, and again, okay, I have to use another Buddhist word. The traditional Buddhist word for this is a state of absorption known as dhyana. Yeah. So this is what we're really doing when we look towards meditate. We're looking to clear away the kleshas if they're there. Sometimes you can sit down to meditate. This is what happened to me when I first meditate. When I first came to meditate as a teenager down in the Buddhist center, I just went straight into this state. This can happen. What Maitrabandha was talking about last week, beginner's mind. And you move into a different state of being, which is free of the kleshas. And you'll know this. We all have, as I said earlier, some experience of this other way of being, which is free of this afflicted veil, at least to some extent. Yeah. And it's important to know, to know that it's there, and to recognize it when it's there, and to also notice the factors in when it's coming. Yeah, noticing what's leading onto it. Somebody was asking me yesterday how to describe it, what it feels like, and it's quite tricky. But the best I could come up with is I don't know if you've ever been scuba diving, but I went scuba diving once. And what happens when you go scuba diving, as many of you will know, is you start off kind of clunky, yeah? You start off all clunky and floppy and, no, not floppy, flip-floppy. The big fins that you have to wear. All this kit, yeah, it's all kind of like, and it's a bit like that when you sit down to meditate sometimes, get your body into gear. And then at a certain point in scuba diving, you just drop into the water, right? You drop into the water, and the physics of your experience completely change, yeah? The physics, you're in a totally different ball game now. No longer uncomfortable, no longer, why am I wearing this and that and that? It's like, it all suddenly kind of sort of starts to make sense. And in that altered sense field, your senses themselves also can become a bit more funky, a bit more strange, yeah? Like as if when you're underwater, sound is different. Our tactile senses are much different because we're covered in water. The way you move is very, very different, yeah? Even I think what reminded me of it particularly is that, of course, in scuba diving, you use your breath to move, yeah? You move your breath to go up and down, yeah? And sometimes in meditations, it's a little bit even like that. When you're absorbed, when you're free of busy, painful afflictions, the absorption with the body changes, the relationship with the body changes, your sense of your breath changes, and it's almost like you can use the breath to steer in your meditation, yeah? Things slow down, your sense of time goes a bit more funky as well, and then you can discover things, yeah? It becomes, interest is there, calm is there, peace is there, but also interest, yeah? Some brilliance, even some sort of different type of energy that makes you bright, yeah? So this is the state we're sort of moving towards when by clearing the kleshas, yeah? It's the kleshas that stop us. The kleshas are like like a foggy cloud, like a cataract, yeah, which stop us moving into that state, which is a much more is a higher human state that is perfectly natural. There's actually quite a lot of ways to cultivate this state, but meditation we're sort of doing it directly. That's what we're moving towards. And from that state, it's a very positive state, especially when it's stronger. Much can happen. So just finally, a few tips on how we can move towards that state more consciously. So sometimes it's enough to sit down in meditation, and this sort of so-called veil of kleshas is really rather thin. Yeah, it's actually just like a kind of haze, and simply meditating, simply being here, it will just burn off. Yeah, it will just burn off. I presume that's what. I think that's what people sort of mean when they say they had a good meditation. It's like it kind of pretty quickly burnt off, and they're into something much more, at least pleasurable. Sometimes it's enough just your positivity is there, your inner warmth, your inner sunshine or something can just burn off the sort of foggy haze blocking that blue sky. Another way which can sometimes work, especially if the afflictions aren't particularly strong, is you just can sort of clock them, and then and in clocking them they can just move. They move along, a bit like watching the clouds. Yeah, they just move through your awareness, and you can let them go. You can go, there I am thinking about that guy in his car again. Actually, I know what that is. There's nothing more to think about here, and it can that can go now. Yeah, it just moves along. Another way, certainly if they're a bit stronger, is to look for what we call, in a sense, the opposite in meditation. Yeah, so cultivate the opposite of what you're being encumbered by, what you're being afflicted by. I find this particularly useful with the restless hankering, with the restless hankering, a bit like what I did in the pub. Here we go. Here comes that hankering. Look for the opposite in your experience, particularly in meditation. This will be really feeling the stillness. For me, it's often in my arms, often in my hands. I can feel like the urge to anything, and it's a clue to really let go of my arms more again let go of my arms. Feel the stillness in your hands. Look for any sense of pleasure in your hands, the warmth of your hands, the stillness, any sense of pleasure from, in a sense, the opposite. From a sense of stillness, from a sense of contentment. From a sense of fullness. Another way, if the restlessness is more infected by confusion or mental struggle, like that sort of vague indecisiveness about if you for a trivial example, like wondering which practice you're doing, or does this really work, or what am I really doing here, or maybe I should be blah, blah, blah. Sometimes, again, just cultivating a sense of why are you here? Why did you come here? There must be something, There must be some reason why you came here. And usually, if you look, if you're just patient a little bit, you can find it again. Sometimes I'm surprised by, just like, I don't know quite what I'm doing at the moment, but look at the lovely gladioli that Vajrabandhu's put on the shrine. Isn't that lovely? I'm really happy to be here looking at the flowers today. So just looking for a sense of what you are clear about. The sort of that much I know, I am confident in this. It might be even recalling a memory like, I'm not sure about the whole thing. I'm not sure about the big golden Buddha, but I am. I have felt better. I have felt better being here. Something I don't even know why this following the breath works. In fact, nobody really knows. But nevertheless, some reason when we follow our breaths and when men and women have followed their breaths over the millennia, things arise which can be, in experience, can be almost miraculous. So just sort of, just patiently remembering what it is you are more confident in, what it is you're more sure about. That's cultivating the opposite, and the restless doubt will often run out. Yeah, it'll just run out in face of a deeper something which you are confident about. Yes, so those are some ways to recognise kleshas, and a few just personal examples, which I hope resonate a little bit about how to work with them slowly in meditation.